Okay, awesome. Well, I do hope that whether you're on with me live this morning or whether you're watching this on replay, that you will enjoy this lesson on Samuel. Samuel is honestly one of my favorite people in the Bible, and I'm going to be super honest right now. There is a series that is out called House of David, and you can watch the first two seasons on Amazon Prime if you have that. Now, granted, they do take some liberties. It's entertainment based on these biblical stories. And they might take a little more liberty than The Chosen does, but I still think it's phenomenal. I'd rather watch imaginative content based on the truths of Scripture than the rest of the garbage that's out there anyway. So I would be more than happy to suggest that if you like action, that you would check out House of David because it's just that good. Anyway, the guy who portrays Samuel, I said that I was going to get his name, and I forgot to do it for some reason, y'all. This is weird. He reminds me so much of Sissy Spacek. I don't know why. Is that weird? There's something about his face, but he is a total badass. He's a total badass, and so I love Samuel for many reasons, and one of them being his ability to communicate so clearly and effectively. And so this week we're going to talk about Samuel, and I've titled this lesson "The Courage to Communicate Clearly." The courage to communicate clearly, and I would say that we're going to talk a lot about courage this week. Some of you have heard it said that, and we'll talk about the definition of courage, but that courage isn't about being fearless. It's just about fearing less, right? It's about taking action despite your fears. So we're going to talk about some key principles here that I think we can learn from Samuel, and one of that is there at the beginning on page 2. Great leaders do not avoid hard conversations. I mean, they speak truth. They speak the truth. And so we're going to talk a lot about courage and truth today. So this is, in my mind, when I think about Samuel, this is a kind of leadership that many people avoid. And I've been working with business leaders for about 20 years now. And what I know, and by the way, I guess I am one myself, but what I do know is that this is the easiest one to avoid. A lot of people get into business for themselves because they do something well, and they love it. And so rather than work for somebody else, they decide to go into business for themselves. If you're familiar with Michael Gerber, if you're not, you should be, if you're a small business owner, because Michael Gerber's work on the E-Myth and the E-Myth Revisited, I think is some of the best work out there for small business owners. What he says, and the E-Myth is the entrepreneurial myth. And the entrepreneurial myth is that he says most small businesses are not started by entrepreneurs. They're started by technicians who have an entrepreneurial seizure. So you can think about it this way. There's this thing that you do well and you really like it. And so you think you should go and just start a business doing that. So you sort of have this entrepreneurial seizure, like, I'm going to go into business for myself. But you're not really an entrepreneur because the definition of an entrepreneur is very strong tolerance to risk. And I've been working with you cats for a long time. Guess what I know? You do not have a high risk tolerance. You are like, I got to cover my ass as much as possible. But anyway, that's the truth. So why do these great, amazing people who love what they do it well? Most of the people I work with are going to be in some sort of a service business, right? They provide a service, not necessarily a product, although I do have some clients that do provide products. But when you provide a service, it's generally because you love serving people. And so being truthful and courageous and saying hard things it's just not high on the list of something that you're excited to do. So I do believe that Samuel models this kind of leadership, and many people do avoid it. So it's about being truthful, direct, what I call courageous. John Maxwell says in the 21 indispensable qualities of a leader, he says, courage is doing what you're afraid to do. And it's pretty simple. So I looked it up in the dictionary, and I looked up a dictionary definition of courage. And it was mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. I don't know if ever thought of yourself as a leader, but you need a lot of mental and moral strength. You do have to venture out, you do have to persevere, and you have to withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. Now, in business, it's generally not life or death, but it often feels that way. Your nervous system doesn't really know the difference anyway. It really doesn't. I mean, the same hormones and chemicals that are secreted when you're facing a saber-toothed tiger could be the same as when you're thinking about having a hard conversation with someone. It's the truth. So your body reacts the same. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you guys to know that when I ask these questions each week, what I want you to do is reflect. I want you to ruminate. I want you to meditate on these things. But I need you to get associated with this. I had a client tell me last week, I want to disassociate from this memory, and I said, no, this thought process. I said, no, I want you to fully associate with a better story because you've associated yourself with a story that's not serving you. I would rather help you create a pattern that better serves you and then get fully associated with it. So I want you to think about that. I want you to get associated with these questions so you can really take them in and decide, do these apply to me? And if they do, what do I need to keep in mind? What needs to change in me? So the first one is, where in your leadership are you tempted to choose comfort over clarity? Right? We all want to be comfortable, regardless of whether you think that you value things like variety and change and learning something new, or feeling like you make a difference, like you matter in the world, or being connected to other people, expressing love, growing, contributing. Regardless of what you think you might value most in terms of those basic human needs, we all value certainty. It is one of those. It's number one. Right? You can look at Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, and that whole of, shelter and protection was at the base of that pyramid. And so I particularly, when I look at the six human needs, as Tony Robbins teaches, I value variety probably a lot more than certainty. But let's face it, when the what hits the fan, I'm looking for certainty. And so it's easy to stay comfortable instead of getting real clarity on what needs to be done. The second question, have you ever, if I ask for a show of hands, I guarantee you every hand would go up. Have you ever avoided a difficult conversation hoping that the situation would just fix itself? Like, let's just go ahead and all raise our hands. It's that conversation with our spouse, with our parents, with our adult children, maybe, with our team, with a customer, like the list is endless. I just kind of hope it'll fix itself. And as Tony Robbins says, hope is not a strategy. Now, I'm not talking about biblical hope where we have hope in God and all that good stuff. That's important. But I'm talking about hope as in wishing. If I just look the other way, it'll actually resolve itself. The old ostrich head in the sand, by the way, little important fact, you can add this to your Trivial Pursuit knowledge. Ostriches do not actually bury their heads in the sand. I don't even know where it came from, but it's not a fact. They don't actually do that. But we've all avoided difficult conversations hoping that it would just go away. And then number 3, what truth are you currently softening because you fear someone's reaction? Anybody a softener out there? By the way, if you're a high I or S on the disc, you're a good softener because we're people pleasers. Like, we love people. We want everybody to get along. Rodney King, can't we all just get along? And so we often soften things because we're afraid. We're afraid of confrontation. 69% of people disc out at a high S. One of the S words you could think about: steady, stable, sensitive, stubborn. But we fear those S's fear confrontation. I'm a high I. We love people. We fear rejection. So don't we want to soften everything and make it all better? Yeah, it was a big one for me to overcome as a coach. Sometimes I have to be courageous and I have to avoid softening things. But it's a tendency for me. Maybe it is for you too. So it says leadership often requires hard conversation. Often. It requires it. So if you're not having them, then my question would be, are you really leading? If you're not having the hard conversations. So I put here on that first page, let me share my screen. I forgot to do that. I'll show you guys what I'm looking at. These are so important. Most leaders enjoy casting vision, encouraging teams, and celebrating wins. I call that cheerleader. Cheerleader, right? It is leader. Cheerleaders are leaders. They're just cheerleaders. And so some people are great at like, I want to cast the vision for my team. Let's go get them all. Let's do it. Let's celebrate our wins. That is important, by the way. But few leaders enjoy the second part, which is confrontation, correction, and then warning people about consequences. So there's not a word for it, but I'll call it challenge leader. So we got to be cheerleaders and challenge leaders. We have to be able to do this. Because we all know this. People and teams only get better when cheerleading and challenge leading are both happening. Am I right about that? Do you think Olympic athletes want their coaches to soften and just go, "Yay, you're amazing. Here's your trophy." Doesn't work that way. You know, people that win in various Olympic trials, these are supposed to be the best of the best in the entire world. The leader will often win by just a fraction of, of a measurement, whether it's time or distance. It's a fraction, like it's small. They only get to that place to be the best of the best if they have a cheerleader and a challenge leader. The new word I made up. But like nobody wants to go to a football game and hear the challenge leaders. But guess what? They're on the field and they're in the locker room. So here's the truth. Avoidance is not kindness. And Samuel teaches us that clear is kind. To have a client, she says her best friend tells her all the time, clear is kind. And this gal is an SI on the disc. And I love her to death. She has a nickname and it's Sally because Sally is so sweet. And Sally doesn't like to confront anybody. She doesn't want anybody to feel like they don't belong. Sally loves everybody. But as a result, sometimes the team is confused. Because if you're sat around the table in the boardroom and said, "Hey, it'd be great. Let's all have a tic tac." Instead of pulling the person aside and saying, "Hey, I love you," you need some mints. Because you be in that table and all the people are saying, "I don't know who's got the bad breath in here, but surely it's not me. I don't know who she's talking about." It's not going to solve the problems. So here's what makes Samuel so tough. He was compassionate, but he didn't become passive, right? Passive aggressive leadership says, it would be great if we all had a tic tac. That's passive leadership. He was emotional without becoming unstable. And you'll hear when I read some of this, Samuel is, like I said earlier, he's really a badass. He was unafraid. He was courageous. And he was direct without becoming cruel. I hope that there's someone in your life that that is compassionate. They can become emotional and very direct, but you don't by any stretch think that they are passive or unstable or cruel. I hope that you know someone that communicates that clearly. There's a church up in Jacksonville, Florida, called the Church of 1122, and the pastor there, his name is Joby Martin. I listen to his sermon every week, and your boy is direct. He's direct. He has no fear of being canceled. And I think he's got about 25,000 people in his church. So he's doing something right. But I mean, he is a courageous communicator and he does not apologize. That's rare leadership. So Israel wanted a king. Like you'll see, I'm going to read this like all the nations. That's what they wanted. They wanted to be like everybody else. And if you know anything about the Old Testament, if you know anything about the Israelites, they were never supposed to be like all the nations. They were set apart to be different from all the nations. They were God's chosen people that he wanted to reflect him and his ability to lead and rule. And they were supposed to lead like God, right? Remember, if you've been with me from the beginning or you've gone back and watched our very first session this year was on Genesis 1:26. And that is about our ability to rule, to subdue, to co-lead with God. In God's image, we were made, right? So, but Israel wanted a king like all the nations. That was their first mistake. trying to be like everybody else. So Samuel faced this defining leadership decision. Now, remember, by the way, that prophets were leaders in those days. Remember the judges, they were leaders. Prophets were supposed to be leaders. So at this point, Samuel, if you go back and read in the beginning of the book 1 Samuel, just know that there were not two separate books originally. There were one long scroll, but because scrolls don't, aren't unlimited in their length, they were sort of split apart into two. But you can read about Hannah, who was Samuel's mother, and Hannah's prayer for a son that she dedicated to God from conception. And so Samuel has a pretty amazing story himself, but he was at this point in his leadership where he would either have to protect his own reputation and his popularity, or whether he was just going to do what God had asked him to do. So he chose courage. He did not deliver his message politically, diplomatically, or strategically diluted. He didn't do it. So I want to read for you here from 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 10 through 18. And I chose for your written portion here from the New Living Translation. I want you to listen, put on your listening ears, and listen to all the words that he used to actually warn people what they were asking for. Listen for the words that indicate demand. So Samuel passed on the Lord's warning. He just passed it on, by the way, to the people who were asking him for a king. This is how a king will reign over you, Samuel said. The king will draft your sons and assign them to his chariots and his charioteers, making them run before his chariots. Some will be generals and captains in his army, and some will be forced to plow in his fields and harvest his crops. And some will make his weapons and chariot equipment. The king will take your daughters from you and force them to cook and bake and make perfumes for him. He will take away the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his own officials. He will take a tenth of your grain and grape harvest and distribute it among his officers and attendants. He will take your male and female slaves and demand the finest of your cattle and donkeys for his own use. He will demand a tenth of your flocks, and you will be his slaves. When that day comes, you will beg for relief from this king you are demanding, but then the Lord will not help you. I mean, could you be any clearer? If you look at the words draft, assign, forced, making, take, all of those demand words, you can see that it was clear that the king that they were wanting, that they were demanding, would ultimately be a taker. Not a giver, a taker. And essentially, the people end up being the slaves of the king. So you can look at the words like take, make, use, force, demand, assign, put, appoint, and you could see there was a very clear warning here that Samuel had for the people. So he gives the people specifics. Your sons will be conscripted, your daughters will serve, your fields will be taken, your wealth will be taxed, your freedom will be diminished. So 4 times now, when I do my prep work, I have to choose, right? I have to choose which verses I'm going to use to illustrate these teachings. And so I will read those verses in a number of different translations. I usually try for like 5 or 6 different translations. And so generally there's 4 like super strong, he will take this from you. But then if you add in all the other demand and appoint and put and force, you come up with anywhere from like on the low end, depending on the translation, 7, on the high end, I counted 13 or 14 words that would indicate this is not going to be good. So this is leadership that's driven by consumption. He's taking, he's not giving, he's not serving. So then I'm going to ask you, are there places where you see consequences coming before others do? Samuel could see around the corner. Now, he had a direct line to God. God warned him about these things. But Tony Robbins says leaders anticipate, losers react. So if you have the ability to anticipate, to see around the corner, Are you letting your team know? Are you warning them about the consequences of their actions? And what responsibility do you think leaders have to warn people honestly? Honestly, that's the key word there. And then of course the big one. Have you ever stayed silent because you knew people would reject your counsel? It's kind of like the softening that we talked about a little while ago. It's staying silent because you're afraid of being rejected. You can imagine, depending on the team that you're leading, this could be really costly. Could be very costly. Think if our military, I don't know if you guys saw that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth delivered the commencement at which one was it? Which is the Army? West Point. He delivered the commencement speech, and he was very direct. It was a great speech. I mean, it was very patriotic and wonderful. But he was very direct about how important it is that these troops are unified to move the mission forward to protect us all. And we just had a day yesterday in the United States where we honored in memorial those who gave everything for us to be able to do the things that we're doing because this doesn't exist around the world. Like we have something very special here. So, a strong leader in the military can't stay silent for fear of rejection. They must move the mission forward. It is a life or death thing. So that tendency that we have to avoid confrontation or rejection is one that we must overcome if we're going to move our mission forward, whatever it is. If it's your business, if it's your family, you know the saying, a house divided will fall, it cannot stand. So, thinking about that, this is a leadership insight. Samuel understood something essential. People often ignore abstract warnings, but they remember concrete consequences. Depending on where you live, you may have weather-related things. Okay, if you're in California, it's earthquakes or wildfires. If you're in Louisiana, like where I'm from, it's hurricanes. If you're in Florida, it's tornadoes, it's hurricanes. You know the difference between and I don't know how this goes with earthquakes. Danielle, you'd have to tell me, but we get here in Florida and in Louisiana, you would get the difference would be a hurricane watch versus a hurricane warning. A tornado watch versus a tornado warning. A watch just means, well, with the circumstances are right or such that this could develop. But a warning says get in the basement. We don't have basements in Florida, but get somewhere safe. Go to the interior of your house, put your mattress over your head, like it's coming. Or if it's a hurricane, get out of town. Find a place to evacuate to. Like we know there are specific consequences for not listening to that, but we'll ignore a watch all day long. Like I'm gonna wait till the alarm sounds before I'm gonna hide. So people need to know what are the concrete consequences. This isn't about manipulation. This is just about being honest and courageous. So that is leadership lesson one. Courageous leaders say the hard things. And truth is, the Bible does say the people did reject his counsel. It says in 1 Samuel 8:19, but the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. They just flat out refused. The Bible's filled with people who do that. So by the way, when you do it, when I do it, we're in good company. Like we come from a long line of humans who've refused to obey the voice that tells us what we need to do. And so, I say here on page 4, let me share my screen again, that modern leadership often confuses kindness with passivity, right? Being passive is not being kind, and being kind is not being passive, but the two do get confused. We do, stereotypes don't come from nowhere. You can look around and see we're in a different place now, that we're supposed to just be nice to everybody. As Brene Brown says, we have to stop being nice and telling people what they want to hear and start being kind and telling them what they need to hear, right? But that's just true. Modern leadership often confuses compassion with silence. Like the best thing I can do is just not say anything. That's not the best thing I can do. That's not the best thing I can do. And often confuses unity with avoidance. Like a show of unity is not me just avoiding the hard things and just pretending like everything's okay. We've gone far too long. I'm not going to get on that soapbox, but with letting everything be okay. Everything's fine, regardless of what you think, say, feel, do, whatever. It's all okay. You do you. You have your truth. I have mine. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work, and we have got to stop doing that. But we've convinced ourselves that that shows that we're unified. That we're unified. That is one of the things Pete Hegseth said, that this phrase that they had used, our strength is in our diversity. He said that's absolutely untrue. In the military, our strength is in our unity. We have to be one unit, filled with diverse people, certainly, but our mission must be unity. It's not avoidance, okay? So Samuel shows us a better way. Truth without love is harshness, but love without truth is cowardice. And to be a great leader, you got to be able to do both. You got to be able to do both. So my questions for you to reflect on is, do people around you experience you as clear or vague? I mean, are you just like sort of putting things out there and hoping they get it? Do you ever think like, well, they should know what I'm talking about? They should get it, right? I heard a story recently around Mother's Day where a client told me that she thought her husband should bring her flowers. And he should know that. But how would he know if she doesn't tell him? I know there's some guys on this call. Don't you wish your wife would just tell you exactly what she wants? Exactly what she wants you to say, do, buy, whatever, so you could just do that? I mean, most guys I know are like, just tell me. Don't leave me in the dark. Don't make me guess. People don't want to have to guess. So are you clear or are you vague? Are you putting hints? It would be great if we all had a mint. Like, what does that even mean? Do I have bad breath? Help me. I don't want to have bad breath. I'll take a mint, but pull me aside and let me know. Gently, but you need to tell me. If you are a high S or a high I, or God help you, a combination of those two on the DISC, this is tough. Clarity is tough because you just want everybody to be happy and get along. Second question, when tension arises, do you become direct or avoidant? Like some people really go full on D on the disc, direct, dominant, demanding, decisive, and they let you know. And then it can feel very off-putting because most of the time, they're sort of dancing around and nice and it's all great. But then under stress, they become this very direct, demanding personality. That's not the solution either, by the way, but neither is avoiding it, hoping that it goes away. Or my favorite, I'll just do it myself. I'll just do it myself. It's easier if I just do it myself than be direct and tell someone on my team, you can't do it this way. I need you to do it differently. Let me help you. Let me give you some feedback on this so that you can improve. And then lastly, are you more concerned with being understood or being liked? Boy, that's a big one. That's a big one. Okay. So I'm going to read you a little bit more from Samuel. And I'm sort of bookending this passage, 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 16 to 23. It starts with this. Then Samuel said to Saul, now Saul is the king that Israel demanded. So Israel wants a king. Samuel warns them it's a really bad idea. They refuse to listen to him and they demand a king like all the other nations. And God tells Samuel, give them what they want. And so Saul is chosen as king. Now, Saul starts out, I mean, this guy's got it going on. He's a head taller than every other man. He's handsome. And he's humble in the beginning. And in fact, when it's time for him to be anointed, they can't even find him. He's hiding in the luggage. He's hiding like in some, boxes or whatever. And so, they have to kind of drag him out. He's just been taking care of his father's donkeys. But I tell you what, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and Saul has become quite the man, building statues of himself. Like he's definitely lost touch. And at one point, Saul is commanded to go out and destroy the Amalekites. So this is verse 16. Then Samuel said to Saul, "Stop. Listen to what the Lord told me last night." Now, the reason he said stop is because he had been in the midst of asking Saul why he didn't complete the job that God had told him to complete. And Saul is giving him all the reasons why he didn't. So again, if you've been with me before, please understand that when God tells the Israelites to completely destroy another people group, we cannot overlay 21st century sensibilities onto those stories. First of all, we weren't there. Secondly, when you go deeper and you understand the depths of evil, you would have a different understanding. So I would encourage you, if it bothers you, if it offends you, to think, if you're trying to assign titles like genocide to the Old Testament story or whatever, you got to do a little more research. I'd love to teach a whole session just on that, but frankly, my own understanding of that is growing as time goes on too. I just got to trust that if this was a people group who is worshiping false idols, sacrificing their own children to false gods on the fire, and rampantly sexually amoral, enslaving people, all that stuff, that God had every right to demand that they be destroyed, but completely. But what happens instead? So it's less about killing all the people and more about the posture of Saul. So what he did, he was supposed to kill everybody and everything, even the animals. And so when Samuel approaches Saul after the battle with the Amalekites, he hears the bleating of sheep. And so he's like, what am I hearing? What is this? Is this livestock? And so Samuel says, well, I mean, we just took the best so that we could sacrifice it to God. Well, that's why we plundered it. We were supposed to burn it all and get rid of it all, but we didn't. And I took King Agag because, let's face it, why would Saul have taken him? Well, because it was a way to establish his dominance and demean the king of the Amalekites. The dude was truly cruel, by the way. But anyway, so when Samuel confronts him for it, he makes a bunch of excuses. He shifts the blame to other people. He pretends like, well, I did do what God said, but here's this or that or the other. So this is why Samuel is saying, stop, like, shut up. I don't want to hear any more of your blame or any more of your excuses. Um, because this is revealing something bigger about Saul than just disobeying God in this one battle. So here's what Samuel replied. What is more pleasing to the Lord, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, or your obedience to his voice? Listen, obedience is better than sacrifice, and submission is better than offering the fat of rams. Rebellion is as sinful as witchcraft, and stubbornness as bad as worshiping idols. So because you have rejected the command of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. And so this piece here, these verses 22 and 23, go on to be repeated numerous times and are still taught to this day. God is less interested in our burnt offerings and sacrifices than he is in our obedience. And so, when you do a little digging and research into the history of why, that can be very challenging to 21st century people, especially in the West. Like, why were people cutting animals and killing them and burning them on the altar? That was a practice that was long established in the human race. And so God met the Hebrews where they were. He met the people where they were. And he took the practice of sacrifice, because people were not only sacrificing animals, but they were regularly sacrificing their children and virgins and all manner of other people. And so he transferred that to the animals. That's again, that's a whole other lesson in and of itself. But people had come to believe that they could do whatever they wanted and then just offer a sacrifice. There are faith traditions today that, although they wouldn't say it this way, in practice, it often becomes people doing whatever they want and then going to confess that and then paying some sort of penance. In fact, it is why the Protestant church exists, because it was in response to that very practice. And so, what Samuel was trying to teach the people, and what I think God wants us to know today, is that He would rather us listen to His voice and obey, submit, surrender everything to Him, and let Him lead us, not try to earn it through offerings or sacrifices or works. So this was a very important lesson, not just for Saul, who, by the way, didn't learn it, but for us through the end of time. And so it's worth thinking about. Where in my life am I surrendering? Am I submitting? Am I listening and then obeying? If God is your ultimate leader, right? And so when you think about yourself as a leader, like, what are you asking your people to do? Have you cast a big enough vision that they can understand it, and then they're willing to do what it takes to move the mission of your team, your business, or your family forward? Right? Or are you just leading positionally? We talked about that a couple of sessions ago with Deborah. Are you leading positionally, excuse me, by setting up a bunch of rules and creating a job description and then just asking people to follow that? Because this is a bigger issue here. It's a bigger issue here, I think. So the next time, I want you to think about this. The next time you need to have a hard conversation, I want you to I want you to think about this. Leaders, wait, hold on. I think I'm behind one. Okay. Yeah. Samuel refused to let excuses cloud the issue, right? So Samuel didn't tiptoe around Saul. He didn't soften the truth, and he didn't protect Saul from accountability. So I want you to think about this, because accountability, we've talked about this, way back in January when we started this, when we did the parable of the talents, and we talked about being accountable and being responsible, what the difference is and what that looks like. But the truth is, I want you to reflect on these questions. Where are you tolerating excuses instead of addressing reality? Now, I will tell you this. I've been coaching people for over 15 years now, and I will tell you that a lot of my clients, because having hard conversations is hard, that's why they call them hard conversations. They would rather listen to people's excuses and tolerate it and buy into it themselves rather than address the reality, right? That happens for a lot of people. For a lot of people, we do it for ourselves. John Maxwell says the best excuse you have is the worst one, because you actually believe it. You actually believe it. So it's the same thing is true with your team. So maybe you're tolerating excuses in yourself, or maybe in other people. And again, this could be the people who work directly for you or with you. It could be, your vendors, the people that support your business and support your clients. It could be your clients themselves, right? But where is this showing up for you? So notice I didn't say, are you tolerating? I'm saying, where are you tolerating? Because we all have the tendency to do this. We got to stop accepting excuses and start expecting results. Again, it doesn't mean that people are never going to make mistakes. It's not even possible. In fact, I would suggest to you that you and your team are not growing unless you're making mistakes, because making mistakes are part of growing. And then the second question is, what difficult conversation have you delayed too long? I want you to really think about that now, because your homework, should you choose to accept it, is going to be about having that conversation. So there's got to be one out there. I don't think I've ever met anybody who said, nope, I have every conversation I need to have when I need to have it. So there may be something out there that is overdue. And what do you think usually costs your courage? What does it cost a leader to lose their courage? Is it fear? Is it approval? Is it comfort? Is it insecurity? What is it for you? What is it for you? We do live in a world where people's worth is in for some people a large part, or at least in some part, based on how much approval they get online. Like whether, and I'm not even talking just about social media. I'm talking about reviews, testimonials, all of these things. Like we think we have to get this constant approval from other people. And so if there's anything that challenges that, we may avoid it. For some people, it is comfort. For some people, they're just insecure. They don't know how to do it. But remember this, if you delay the truth, you're going to multiply the dysfunction. So this is leadership lesson number 2. Leaders must confront excuses and demand accountability. So this is not just about Saul's disobedience. That's what it is. It was that he refused to own it. I think we're all familiar with this concept. The there was a situation in my life recently that only this could only be the work of God in my life. That someone who had made a mistake again, and it had definitely was not the first time. I mean, I couldn't even count on my fingers and toes how many times this person made this mistake, but owned it, which is also a new thing. That can only be the work of God. And strangely enough, when they owned it for the first time, I did not want to punish him. For the very first time in our 18 years together. Okay, it's my husband. I'm talking about my husband. It was the very first time in 18 years I didn't want to punish him for making the same mistake he had made multiple times. In fact, I just wanted to receive him. I wanted to welcome him, and I wanted to forgive him. And I did. And in that moment, when I reached for his hand, and I said in my mind, I want to forgive him. I forgive him. I really felt, I'm not one of those people that hears voices or anything, but I really felt the voice of God say, now you know how I feel. And then I thought to myself, he's probably going to do it again. And then, y'all, I'm telling you, this was chilling. I heard this thought, now you really know how I feel. And I thought, that's unbelievable. That's God, right? Because we make mistakes and he takes us back. And we make them the same mistake again. And he takes us back again and again. So here's the truth. If Saul had owned this, if he had been accountable to this, instead of shifting blame or making excuses or twisting the story to make it fit his narrative, if he had just taken ownership and taken responsibility and been willing to be accountable, he could have been a great leader. He could have been a great leader, but he didn't do it. So strong leaders are willing to own their decisions. They're willing to confront problems directly and address issues before they grow into something bigger. Tony Robbins says it this way, kill the monster while it's still a baby. You let it grow up, it's going to eat your town like Godzilla or King Kong. Kill it while it's a baby. So that is the truth, though. And we know this, that great leaders own their decisions, even if, at some point they have to pivot. They still own what they've decided. They don't make excuses for themselves, and they don't hide things. They don't avoid those confrontations. So I want you to, I created a little graph here. The next time you have to have a strong leadership decision and have a fierce conversation, a tough conversation, think about how you want to respond. All right, just think about how you want to respond. And then I want you to take your response, the one that you're planning in your head, and lay it on this chart to see where it is. Am I a strong leader like Samuel, or am I a weak leader? Am I going to speak the truth clearly, or am I going to avoid hard conversations? Am I going to deliver messages with conviction, Or am I going to edit messages for acceptance? Right? That's the softening, right? Am I going to affirm and correct honestly? If I'm affirming you, I want to do it honestly. I want to be specific about what you've done. And if I'm going to correct you, I'm going to do that honestly and specifically. I'm going to give that feedback that way. Or am I going to use flattery or silence when it comes to this issue? Am I going to value integrity over approval or approval over integrity? Am I going to grieve emotionally but lead faithfully, or am I going to let my emotions compromise my leadership? Some people have that tendency to sort of stuff things down and ignore problems and maybe throw out a little passive aggressive hints now and again. And then the pressure just keeps building until you blow like a tea kettle. And you can do a lot of damage to relationships, those in your life or those in your business if you do that. So, going back to how John Maxwell defined courage as doing the things that you're afraid of doing, Samuel did that. He spoke truth even when it cost him. And I mean, the story gets thicker. People think about the books of First and Second Samuel as primarily the stories of Saul and David, but it's way bigger than that. Like if you do study the Bible, if you do study scripture regularly, maybe you commit to studying First and Second Samuel, thinking only about Samuel. You know, the focus, it's easy to get lost in the David and Goliath and David and Bathsheba and all the things. It's easy to do that, but really think about Samuel and his courage. He confronted issues early. He refused to be a passive leader and he prioritized the mission over his own comfort. Man, they tried to take him down multiple times. Saul wanted rid of Samuel because he was the thorn in his side for real. So, a few more questions here. What would change in your leadership if you communicated with Samuel's level of conviction? Like, what would change for you? If you just decided, I mean, I think, the people that I work with in very large part are they're so convicted about their mission. They know what they're doing and they know why they're doing it. It really matters to them. And that's mostly because the people that I work with are attracted to me. We're connected like that because we're similarly aligned from a values and a mission perspective. And then, people that maybe that I speak with that I don't end up working with, it's mostly because we're just not aligned in that. So it's easy to think, well, then, all people must be that convicted about their work. But actually, that's not true because most people would don't hire other people to help them. I got some coaches on this call. We know that. Most people just figure they need to figure it out on their own. Do you know a lot of business leaders think that if they hired a coach, it would somehow mean that they don't know enough or they're not good enough? It's the most asinine thing in the world because when we think about where the word coach comes from, we think of sports, and every great sports team or every great athlete gets a lot of coaching. A lot. I don't know how many coaches there are on a professional or college football team, but there's a lot of them. There's a head coach, but then there's tons of coaches that work with running and kicking and throwing and tackling. Like we all understand that. The best of the best get where they are because they're coached. But some people in business feel like, well, I shouldn't have someone to coach me. It's ridiculous. I don't know how you get through life without a coach. But anyway, what if you did? Because I guarantee you that a lot of the people that are in the business you're in don't have that level of conviction. And so they're not having these conversations. So what would change if you decided to lead that way? And who in your life needs clarity from you right now? Who are you hinting around with? Who are you dropping hints or passive aggressively, however that would sound, trying to tell them what you need? And what relationship, what team, or what situation might improve if you stopped avoiding the necessary conversations? I hope you have one in mind, because again, I'm going to give you a challenge this week to think about. So Samuel reminds us that leadership is not measured by how many people applaud us. What if instead, by the way, what if you thought my leadership is measured by how many lives are changed because of the work that I do? Just a thought there. This is about being influential, not being an influencer. I mean, that didn't even exist. I don't know how long that's been a term. What, maybe a decade even? That people consider themselves influencers. And if you look at those people, many of them are just celebrities. Like, how is that a thing? How are celebrities leaders these days? It blows my mind. They need to keep their mouth shut and go sing their songs and act in their movies. But I don't know why feel like they need to get up on a high horse about so many things. But what if you decided to be influential and stop trying to be an influencer? And what if instead of measuring your ability to lead by your likes or how much applause you get, what if you started thinking, how many lives have I changed? How many lives have I helped change? Because I guarantee you at the end of it all, that would be far more satisfying. So let's take the Samuel challenge and let's actually steward the relationships that we have as we've been challenged to do. That was God's design for us. You can go back to Genesis 1:26. God designed us to steward, to be stewards, not just of the earth, I would suggest. So sometimes the most loving thing you can do is tell the truth before the consequences do it for you. Have you ever experienced the consequences of softening or avoiding or tacitly rewarding bad behavior? Sometimes the consequences of not having tough conversations is the end of a relationship. I would suggest to you that Alison Armstrong, who teaches a lot about relationships, she poses it this way to men and women. What if no one's misbehaving, not even you? Like, what if your intentions are good, but you're just not saying what needs to be said? And so I've been divorced, unfortunately, more than once. And I can promise you that in every case, it all comes back to communication. I will tell you, if you deal with customers, you can look at any situation where it's gone sideways, and you're going to see that the communication was off. Either it wasn't done correctly in the right format, often enough, or just truthfully. Relationships with your colleagues or your competitors, with the vendors who support your business, in your family. When it goes sideways, unless you truly have decided to do business with someone that's so completely out of alignment with who you are and what you're about to do. Most of the people that we enter into relationship with, we do it from a good or a great intention. And what goes wrong? It always comes down to communication. So, over the next 7 days, what I would ask you to do is identify one conversation you've been avoiding. I've asked you about it already twice this morning. And just think of one conversation that you know you need to have. And I want you to think, can I commit to addressing this conversation with clarity? Remember, clear is kind, with courage, with humility, and with truth. Humility is a big part of this. So I'm not talking about being harsh or emotional or aggressive, none of those things, just clearly. And before the conversation, ask yourself what needs to be said. Why have I delayed saying it? And how can I speak this truth faithfully and lovingly? And then just do what Samuel did. Say what needs to be said. Some of you may be familiar with a woman named Susan Scott. Susan Scott wrote a book called Fierce Conversations. I should have taken it off the shelf. This book is so worn and yellowed and scribbled in, and it's because I've used it so frequently since I first heard about it, probably 15, 17 years ago. And in the fierce conversation, she says, is one in which we come out from behind ourselves and step into the conversation. If you think about the word conversation, it's conversate. Con means with, and of course, talk. Talk with someone, not at them, not to them, but with them. And so to have a fierce conversation, you have to be willing to come out from behind the mask that we put on every day and have a real conversation. And so I'll often talk clients through how to use. She's got in the back of the book a sort of a planner. I have that. If anybody wants it, you can email me and I'll send it to you on from the Google Drive. But it's a fierce conversation planner that will really allow you to sit down and gather your thoughts so that you can have the conversation effectively. And I've used it so many times, and clients have used it. And I can tell you every single time, I'm actually speaking to the person from my notes. And that's so that I don't get emotional. I'm a girl, I can cry. And so every time I've done it, no matter how fearful I was going in, I always come out with this sense of relief. And it always goes way better than I even imagined it would. So we got to be willing to have fierce conversations. And Susan Scott uses the word fierce because she compares it to the love of a mother, and I would say a father too, but the mama bear, where you love somebody so fiercely that you will do anything to protect that relationship and to grow and to help them to grow. Does that make sense? you know that level of care and concern for other people, that you're willing to have a fierce conversation. So I hope this has been helpful, thinking about Samuel and how to tell the truth without apology, but kindly. Clear is kind. And I hope that you'll take me up on this. And if you do it and you have that conversation after thinking about it, maybe praying about it if you're a praying person, and really sitting down with the person that you need to have the conversation with, I hope you'll let me know how it goes, because I would love to support you. I want to be your cheerleader and your challenge leader. That's my goal. So go out, have the best conversations you've ever had, and watch things change. And remember that your life, your success as a leader is not about applause. It's about impact. All right, guys, have a fantastic week, and I hope I'll see you next time.